Hi, everyone. Welcome to our webinar, The Playbook to Planning Your Virtual Event. My name is Callie, and this is my colleague, Colleen, and we are both on the marketing team at MemberClicks, and we will be your presenters for today. Now, we have a lot of content to go over, but before we get started, I do have just a couple housekeeping items that I'd like to go over. First, just as a reminder, this webinar is worth 1 CAE credit, and we will send everyone a certificate of attendance in the next couple of days. We will also be recording this webinar. So if you can't stick around until the very end, no worries. We will send everyone a recording. But that said, I do encourage you to stick around until the end if you can, because Colleen and I have a really exciting announcement that we're going to be making. So don't go anywhere. Okay, now I want to quickly turn it over to my other colleague, Erin Hall, and she will give you a quick overview of who and what MemberClicks even is. So Erin, I'll hand it off to you.
Great. Thank you, Callie, and welcome everyone to our September webinar. It's so good to see you all here. I do realize that I am the only thing standing between you and learning more about executing the perfect virtual event, so I'll be brief. You are in for a real treat today, as I'm sure many of you already know. Callie and Colleen are going to give you all the tips, the tricks, the considerations for pulling off a great event or conference in an online environment. And when MemberClicks did this in May, we used a few of our own solutions. And certainly you're going to learn a little bit more about that today. And as you do, I'll ask that you kind of keep in mind that MemberClicks is here to partner with associations and chambers in reaching short-term goals, such as, I don't know, taking an in-person event, moving it completely virtual on a dime, but we're also here to help you achieve long-term success and sustain success over time. And how we do that is by offering a connected ecosystem of solutions. And we've built those specifically for associations and chambers of commerce. At the center of that, we have two AMS systems, Oasis and Atlas. Now, Oasis is really specifically built for professional associations and hybrids, while Atlas is geared more toward trade associations and chambers who might have more complex membership needs. But each of them do provide that all-in-one capability that you need to save time, grow your membership, and certainly generate some non-dues revenue. So things like membership database, a website with content management, communications management, payment processing, reporting and analytics, event registration, all those things that are central to what you all do every single day, our AMS systems can handle that. But we also have additional solutions that help you connect more, help you do more. Certainly that includes MCLMS, which you may have heard of before. That's our learning management system. And that's actually what we use to host our virtual one-day event, if any of you guys went to that back in May. And it's really perfect for that kind of thing. And then for digital content organization and delivery, hosting on-demand recordings, monetizing your organizational assets, and certainly increasing member engagement. Now, ePly is our full conference management solution. And it's really perfect for managing in-person and virtual events and conferences, everything from promotion through registration, all the way through execution and evaluation of your events. Now, the conference app, that puts your flagship events in the palm of your attendees' hand. And it really gives them that streamlined, smooth conference experience because they'll have all the information that they need to move through your event seamlessly and to leave a lasting impression so that they come back for your next one. Now, finally, we do have a job board. Many of you might not know that one yet. We have MC Job Board. It really is a stellar way to not only boost credibility for your organization as an industry leader and as a workforce development leader, but also to provide meaningful membership benefits that might not exist currently, and not to mention generate a hefty amount of non-dues revenue in the process for your organization. So I know we're all looking for those opportunities every day. So as you can see in here, our solutions definitely cover a wide range of tasks and goals. They're all designed to help make your job easier, right? So using them individually is wonderful, but our solutions are really built to be connected to one another so that you can realize simplification across the board. So think simplification in billing, admin setup, and even daily maintenance of your tasks, and certainly member access to everything that your organization has to offer. And as we all know, member satisfaction is what really keeps our organizations thriving for years to come. So if you are interested in learning more, we would love to talk with you. Head on over to memberclicks.com. You can learn about all the solutions I mentioned today, and you can get in touch with us that way as well. We look forward to sharing more. And that's all I have for you today. Thanks for your attention and enjoy today's program. Callie, back to you.
Thanks, Erin. Okay, well, now for the content that I know you all have been waiting for, the playbook to planning your virtual event. Now, I want to start by kind of giving you the backstory here. So earlier this year, MemberClicks was planning on hosting it was actually a 3-day in-person event in Atlanta, and it was called MC Live. And it was scheduled to take place at the end of April. But obviously, with the outbreak of COVID, we weren't able to host that event. And we didn't know when we would be able to reschedule that event for. And so MC Live was kind of just up in the air. But we didn't want to wait until we had answers because we didn't know when that was going to be. So, like many, we decided we were going to pivot. And we decided to host a 1-day virtual event called MC Thrive. Now, MC Thrive wasn't designed to replace MC Live. It was just an opportunity to add value to those who were registered for MC Live, who were sponsoring MC Live, but also the industry as a whole. Because with COVID, suddenly we all had these new challenges we were facing. So we figured this is the perfect time to come together, share ideas, and try and help each other out. And so that is where MC Thrive was born. But full disclosure, MC Thrive, this was our first time planning a virtual event like this. We had planned and hosted a handful of webinars. We had hosted a number of 1- and 2-day virtual trainings for our clients, but we had never hosted a conference-style virtual event. And the only reason I bring that up is because I know many of you are new to the virtual event planning world, and I just want you to know that you are not alone. You're in good company here, because we were in that same boat. We had about 5 to 6 weeks to plan MC Thrive, and as you can imagine, our team learned a ton. And so once it was all over, we put together a pretty hefty playbook that we could then use moving forward for future virtual events, because we know virtual events aren't going anywhere anytime soon, whether they're in standalone form or hybrid form. So we wanted to have a playbook. And that is what today is all about. We want to share that playbook with you. So we will dive right in. First things first, when planning a virtual event, you want to set goals as a team. This is critical. You want to make sure that you are all aligned on why you're even hosting a virtual event in the first place. Is it to replace an in-person event that you can no longer hold? Is it to generate more non-dues revenue? Is it to engage your members and provide them with added value? It might be all of those, but it's important to hone in on one goal. What is the ultimate goal of this event? It's really hard to be successful and to look back and say, yes, that event was a major hit. We should replicate it in the spring. It's hard to say that if you don't know what success looks like or what you're even trying to accomplish. So I encourage you to sit down with your team and ask, why are we hosting a virtual event? What overall organizational goals does it contribute to? Who is our audience and what do we want them to get out of attending? How you and your team answer these questions should then inform every other decision you make. So don't skip this step. Once you've done that though, you'll then want to map out the event layout and start planning your content. Now, you'll want to start by creating an agenda outline. And you can almost think of this as a skeleton of your event. What do you want your event to look like? How long will the event be? Will it be one day or multiple days? Will they be half days or full days? What about sessions? Do you envision your event having one session at a time or concurrent sessions? And what about activities? Do you plan to have any activities throughout the day? So, for example, yoga in the afternoon or happy hour at the end of the day. Go ahead and build out what you want your event to look like. And as you're doing that, don't forget to add in breaks, even if they're just 10 minutes here and there. I know we are all experiencing Zoom fatigue these days, so just be mindful of that. Give your attendees time to get up, stretch their legs, grab some coffee or snacks, and all of that good stuff. Then, once you know what you want your event to look like, so for example, you want 2 sessions in the morning, then you want to have some kind of activity, and then you want 3 sessions in the afternoon. Once you know that, you can then start planning the actual content. So, what do you want those sessions to be? Now, if this was an event that you started planning months and months and months ago, maybe it was supposed to be an in-person event, but you're realizing it has to be virtual now. You might already have some speakers lined up because I know organizations sometimes select those far in advance. If that's the case, just go back and read through those session descriptions to make sure they're still relevant given where we all are today. A lot has changed since the beginning of the year. So go back, make sure they're relevant. If they're not, don't hesitate to go back to your speakers and ask if they would be willing to revise their topics a little bit, just to make them a little bit more relevant, a little bit more valuable to what your attendees are hoping for. Now, if this is a brand new event and you're starting from scratch, when you're planning your content, start by identifying your members' biggest wants and needs. What are they struggling with? What information are they desperately needing more of? Depending on how much time you have to plan your event, you may even want to send a survey to your members, just asking, what's keeping you up at night? What do you want to know more about? And then you can select your content based on some of the feedback that you get. If you're able to do that, then more than likely more of your members are going to attend if the content is tailored to what they were hoping for in the first place. Now, one tip here that I learned when planning MC Thrive: don't underestimate the power of your networks. So when we were planning MC Thrive, there was one session in particular that I could not find a speaker for. I knew what I wanted the topic to be. I knew what I wanted them to speak about, but I just couldn't find anyone to speak on that topic. And so I was striking out left and right. I was running out of time. So I decided that I was just going to go to an industry Facebook group that I'm a part of and just ask if anyone has any recommendations. Well, sure enough, they immediately started pouring in with amazing recommendations. And I saved all of them for future events, by the way. But that's how I found my speaker for that session. And it actually ended up being the most in-demand session of the event and one of the highest rated sessions of the event. And that's a speaker that I never would have found on my own. And so it really pays to tap into your networks. So if you're not currently a member of industry Facebook groups and LinkedIn groups, I highly encourage you to go ahead and start joining some of those so that when the time comes, you may not need anything now, but when the time comes, you will have people that you can reach out to. It's great when it comes to speaker selections. And just for the record, for all of my association professionals out there, the Facebook group that I went to was called Association Chat. And it's basically where association professionals can interact with each other, share content, ask ideas. It's a great group. So If you want to join, highly recommend, but that's what saved me when it came to these speakers.
Okay, so once you have a general idea of what the event itself is going to look like, it's time to identify a platform to host it on. And I know when you start thinking about this virtual platform, at first it can kind of be a little bit ambiguous, but really you want to think of it as something beyond Zoom, beyond a few Zoom links here and there. Consider it your virtual venue where people are going to access everything that your event has to offer, whether it's sessions, activities, networking, some kind of trade show, hall or expo or sponsorship representation. It's your venue, right? And the home page where you land and the pages where you navigate in between are your hallways. That's kind of the easiest way to think about it. And we, of course, ended up using, like Erin mentioned, our learning management system, MCLMS. And as she mentioned, it wasn't built to host a virtual event per se, but it was definitely built to deliver content, and we knew we could make it work how we needed it to, just with its flexibility. But for those of you who are shopping, we do have a few recommendations. So one reason why we recommend even building that rough agenda in the first place is so that you can ask specific questions as you're going through the shopping process. You want to make sure that the platform can support all of those great session and activity ideas that you came up with. For example, if you're planning to host concurrent sessions, then you need to make sure that that platform has that capability. Some other considerations as you're going through the shopping process: absolutely make sure that it is a user-friendly platform. That means for you as the producer, as the person who's going to be building content and clicking things on the back end, and then as well as for attendees. This is a new experience for them too. So as soon as they log in, they're going to need to know where to navigate to go to their first session. You want to make sure that it's easy to navigate from session to session, and just so they understand where they need to be at all times. Backing up a little bit, what does the registration process look like? How does that get incorporated into your platform? And even going a step further, you might want to ask your providers how attendees receive their login information after registering, or what kind of control you have over how they get that access. What level of support, if any, does the provider offer? Ideally, you'll be able to easily reach somebody the day of if you have questions or any problems, but asking these questions ahead of time will help you understand what kind of support gaps you might need to fill with your own event staffing, which we'll get to here in a little bit. And then, of course, opportunities for engagement, space and feature-wise, and that's attendee engagement and sponsor engagement, of course. The whole point of events is engaging our audience and engaging our partners. So you'll want to ask, specifically what is built into the platform to allow for that. And one thing that we highly recommend is ensuring that there's a way for attendees to chat during sessions. That was something we found actually did a really great job of replicating some of that in-person energy during the online experience, for attendees to really be able to talk about the things that speakers were discussing live and in real time was really cool to watch. And then, of course, sponsor representation. Definitely ask about that. Some platforms have them built in, some do not. And Callie will actually get into some tactics here in just a minute. And then finally, based on your agenda, based on the platforms that you're looking at, what other tools might you have to incorporate? Platforms vary on size and features, and one really, really important item to understand is how the actual live stream piece happens. Is it native to the platform, or will you want to incorporate something like Zoom or Crowdcast or another live stream provider? And then once you've landed on that platform, once you've landed on any other tools that you might use, test, and test some more. Cannot express that enough. You're going to want at least one person on your event team to act as kind of the subject matter expert for all of your tools, somebody who's comfortable getting in there and truly understanding how it all works. As you're digging into the settings, you might even be surprised to find different ways to incorporate your own branding or affect attendee engagement. For example, did you know that in Zoom, you can control whether or not attendees actually have access to chatting with each other? I did not until recently. So make sure that you really explore every corner of all of your tools and lean into that subject matter expert as you're getting closer to the day of for questions and troubleshooting.
Okay, sponsorships. So sponsorships with a virtual event can be a little tricky because you kind of have to think outside the box. You can't offer your sponsors all of the same things that you might offer them at an in-person event. For example, you don't have that on-site signage. You don't have floor decals. So you kind of have to get creative here. But the good news is there are plenty of ways that you can provide sponsor value with a virtual event. When you are building your sponsorship packages, I encourage you to think of opportunities before, during, and after the event to add value. So I put together just a couple ideas here, ways throughout each stage that you can add sponsor value. The first goes without saying, but be sure to include your sponsors' logos on all of your promotional materials. So on your event registration page, on your, or in your promotional emails, all of that. Next, social media shout outs. Now, often I will see organizations thank their sponsors, give a shout out to their sponsors, all in the same post, and they'll just tag all of their sponsors. There's nothing wrong with that, but I do encourage you to give your sponsors individual shout outs. That will allow you to expand on what your sponsor does, what their value prop is, and also include a little link back to their website. So it's just more valuable for the sponsor if you're able to give them an individual post. And also they're more likely to share that than they would a post with 12 or more companies listed. Next, blog contributions. If your organization has a blog, that's a great opportunity to add sponsor value. If you decide to go this route, encourage your sponsors to provide some kind of thought leadership piece. Whatever it is that they're an expert in, ask them to provide some tips and best practices. You can then publish that on your blog. You can also share it in your organization's newsletter, and you can share it on social media. Now, this is a great place. This is a place where you can actually insert some numbers here to make your sponsorship packages a little bit more appealing. If you have a reputable blog, if you have a pretty good following, you can include how many subscribers you have, how many monthly views you get. If those are attractive, then that's a really great selling point for your sponsorships. And pre-show emails. You may want to reserve this one for your top tier sponsors, just so that your attendees aren't bombarded with sponsor emails before the event even starts. But if you decide to do this, you may want to give your top tier sponsors the registration list and allow them to send an email prior to the event, maybe a come see us type of message. During the event, even though this is a virtual event, you still want to give your sponsors as much face time as possible. And one great way to do that is by allowing them to introduce your speakers. So allow them to turn their video on, talk for just a minute about what their company does, and then introduce the speaker. Just a tip here though, if you do give your if you give your sponsors FaceTime and you're allowing them to turn on their video and speak and everything like that, whenever you do your technology run through, which Colleen will talk about in a little bit, but when you are testing everything and you're running through it with your speakers, make sure to include your sponsors in that too. It's important that they understand and feel comfortable with the technology just as much as a speaker would. The last thing you want is for your sponsor not to be able to get on video and deliver the message that they want to simply because they were having some technical difficulties. Exhibit spaces. This depends a little bit on what type of event you're hosting, but if it makes sense for your particular event, you may want to consider creating some kind of virtual exhibit hall for your sponsors. Each sponsor would have a virtual booth, and you could then encourage them to upload PDFs, videos, interactive content like quizzes. You could encourage your sponsors to have special promos in there exclusively for your event attendees. And you could also encourage them to host giveaways throughout the day. And then as you are going throughout sessions throughout the day, just remind people to go visit your sponsor's booth. And last, sponsored activities. If you are having activities throughout the day, so for example, trivia, make sure you're involving your sponsors in those activities. This is when your attendees are going to be the most hyped up, the most engaged, and so you definitely don't want to leave your sponsors out of that. So I'll give you an example of what we did at MC Thrive. We had a short game of trivia right before lunch, and all of the trivia questions were based on our sponsors and our speakers. We asked all of our sponsors and all of our speakers prior to the event if they would provide us with some kind of fun fact. And we then turned those into trivia questions. And these were they were silly questions. They didn't really have much to do with the company itself or the industry. It wasn't salesy. So for example, one of the questions was, this person has seen Black Sabbath in concert 13 times. It really got people talking in the chat box. It was fun, but it was also a way to involve our speakers and our sponsors. And then at the end of trivia, one of the sponsors provided the winner with a $25 gift card. So if you have activities, try to include your sponsors. And then after the event, same thing. If you provided some of your top tier sponsors with the registration list and the ability to send a pre-show email, you may want to allow them to send a post-show email as well. Evaluation survey. So hopefully you will send a post-event survey to get feedback on how your event was. Well, within that survey, you may want to include a question asking if anyone would like follow-up from any of your sponsors. You could then have check boxes next to each of your sponsors for the event. And then if there are any hand raisers, you can pass those along to your sponsors. Maybe you won't get hand raisers, maybe you will. But what's important is that you're doing everything you can as the event planner to help your sponsors get as much value from that event as possible. And this is just one extra way that you can do that. And then last, on-demand recordings. So hopefully you're recording all of your sessions and you're going to offer them on demand later. When you do that, if you did give your speakers or your sponsors any face time, if they came on and they introduced the speaker, or maybe you showed a video that they put together, keep that in the on-demand recordings. And that way the sponsor value kind of lives on even after the event is over.
All right, so let's talk promotion. You got everything together and now you're ready to tell people. But before you can do that, let's talk pricing. I know over the last few months, whether or not to even price a virtual event has been kind of a hot topic, and we say that you absolutely should. It's just as valuable as an in-person experience and might even be more cost effective for you. So when you're kind of considering that cost versus value game there, you might find more wiggle room for yourself. So costs for a virtual event are largely going to be that platform, any speaker fees, any attendee engagement that you want to do outside of the platform. And as far as value, it's really the same as what you would be providing in person. You're still going to have top-notch content. You're still going to likely be providing some kind of continuing education. You're still going to be providing ways for people to connect, and that is all worth something. And a couple other things, just as you're looking around, see what other people are doing. Organizations similar size of yours, similar makeup, similar region to yours, and experiment with some different pricing tiers. Maybe as it gets closer to the event, it gets a little bit more expensive. Bundles are another good way to go if somebody wants to bring 3 or more, 5 or more, whatever that kind of break-even number is, as well as discounts for certain members or certain groups of members, and then promotions that you can kind of put out every once in a while as you're leading up to the event. And then when you are ready to sell it, we have a few marketing tips for you. So definitely go back to those questions that you answered as a team, and clearly define and communicate your value proposition. If you can kind of boil down everything that you talked about into like 2 to 3 sentences, use that consistently throughout your marketing on the website, in emails, etc. It'll really help reinforce exactly why you're putting on this virtual event and what attendees can expect to get out of it. And don't be afraid to lean into the fact that it's virtual. Remind members that they can attend from anywhere, and likely at a lower cost, right? And it's far less disruptive to your day or your week to attend an event from home as well. And then leverage all the channels that you have. Repetition is going to be key here. You know, a virtual event is just as new for your members as it is for you. So you want to make sure that they understand exactly what to expect and why they should attend. And then another strategy that is good to consider with a virtual event in particular is gradually announcing your speakers along the way. We've found that people tend to wait to register for a virtual event. So if you kind of hold back on some of those more exciting elements, that is usually a good way to kind of help get people off the fence and into registration. So for the most part, we've been talking about content, sponsors, a lot of very familiar things. But how are you going to actually manage the event the day of? It's quite a bit different than an in-person event where you are with your team. So to do this, you want to prepare thoroughly for the day of. We did this by developing a very detailed run of show document, and we started developing it pretty much when we started planning the event so that we could kind of control the flow of the day and really make it engaging and as impactful as possible. And it also helped us kind of identify where there might have been gaps in the day, or like an awkward transition, or where we might need somebody to step in and do something, which then leads me to determining your staffing needs. It could be, you know, there's a lot of similar staffing to an in-person event, but you might have somebody dedicated to sitting behind the screen and controlling mics and cameras and making sure that everybody is where they need to be. You might have somebody like Callie who acts as kind of your host or MC throughout the day. That's what she did for MC Thrive. But one thing that you absolutely should have planned for is technical support. So I know I mentioned considering what your provider will do support-wise, but likely they're not going to be supporting attendees. That's going to be your job. So depending on the number of attendees that you have, you'll want to have probably 2 to 3 people who are dedicated solely to making sure attendees are getting where they need to go. And keep in mind that you're going to have the biggest rush like right at the beginning of the day, or right at the beginning of the first day if it's a 2-day event, when people are logging in for the first time. And you know, you'll communicate it many times, but inevitably people will lose their login, or they won't be able to find it, or they'll just have trouble one way or another. So make sure that you have that rush especially prepared for. And then you want to have a way to contact each other kind of behind the scenes, whether that's through text or Slack. You don't want to be necessarily doing it where attendees can see, just so that it's not distracting. And then conducting run-throughs. I know Callie talked about this a little bit, but it's super important to that testing that I spoke to earlier as well. Making sure that all of your speakers, your sponsors, anybody who's going to be on camera and having a speaking part knows how to use the tools, when they should join, and just being prepared for that so that it runs smoothly. And you might even, if your team internally isn't going to be speaking, you might still do a quick run through of, the first 15 to 20 minutes of the day, just so that everybody's comfortable with how it's going to get started. That was kind of the biggest hump, I think, for us to get over, was like just getting the day started. And then once we were rolling, everything flowed pretty smoothly because of that their detailed run of show. It was very, very detailed. Don't be afraid to put anything and everything on there. And finally, contingency plans. This is also something that's not foreign to any event planner, but it's a little different, of course, in a virtual environment. Have a plan not only for the different tools that you're using, so your platform, whatever live stream tool, any other engagement tools, but also have a backup for everybody's role. If something were to happen the day of, you want to make sure that you have somebody prepared to step in and take over. And then finally, you're ready to wrap it up. But one key benefit of a virtual event is that experience can live on. So you definitely want to have a plan for uploading that content, whether you turn the platform into an entirely on-demand experience that is very similar to the event itself, or you take that content and turn it into something fresh and new. For example, some kind of continued education lesson or course. And that's actually another thing to consider when you're shopping for platforms, is whether or not they can deliver that content. And then, of course, you'll thank your attendees, your speakers, and your sponsors. You'll want to have an individual follow-up plan for each of those groups, as well as individual surveys. Callie did mention sponsor surveys, but absolutely survey everybody involved, ask for their feedback. You'll want to understand what they enjoyed and what you could do better for next time. And then finally, evaluate internally. It's just as new for your event planning team as it is for the rest of your team. So make sure that you gain perspective from all corners of the organization to help make all of your virtual experiences better moving forward.
Yeah, so just to kind of wrap up, I know that if this is your first time planning a virtual event, then it's probably a little overwhelming. But we have seen so many organizations host virtual events for the first time this year, the MemberClicks marketing team included, and they've gone great. And so we have full faith that you can do this if you haven't done it already. That said, while you are planning your virtual event, just remember to focus on the basics and provide your attendees with value. That should be where your focus is at. Remember, you can always add in flair later. You do not have to plan the most elaborate virtual event that anyone has ever seen. Just focus on the basics, make sure that the little details work, that everything works. And then also just focus on providing your attendees with value. If your attendees leave the event and they say, yes, that was worth my time, that was worth my money, then that was a successful event. So don't get overwhelmed by what are these cool activities that we can do. You can always add that in later. Just focus on value. Okay, so that is kind of a wrap on how to and what your playbook should look like. But that said, Colleen and I are going to do some questions and answers. We're going to take some Q&A. So if you have a question, please drop it in the Q&A box now. I see that several have already come through. So we're going to kind of field through some of these. So bear with me just a moment.
I'm seeing a lot about the run of show. I'll be honest, ours was like literally a Google Doc that was just bulleted like all the way down. I think we had like a section, kind of for each session, and then like bullets underneath about, what would happen at what time. I think I might have seen Erin offer to hand that template out, so we'll get that out to y'all. But it was pretty basic, to be totally honest.
I see one in here about, I was wondering if you have any ideas for raffle prizes. So for MC Thrive, we actually did a lot of gift cards, Amazon gift cards. For ASAE, which was a conference that we were a part of recently, we also offered it was a orange mule cocktail kit. That was a fun one. This was a little bit different, but well received. For NC Thrive, we wanted people to engage throughout the day. And so for every activity that they participated in, for example, for every survey that they completed post session, and for every sponsor booth quiz that they completed, they would be entered to win our grand prize. And our grand prize was a $100 gift card to the place of their choice. They had a handful that they could choose from, but then also how much was it, Colleen? Was it 500?
Yes, the donation, yep.
Yeah. So it was a $500 donation to the charity of their choice in their name. And people were really excited about that. People in the association and chamber industry are very passionate, which is one thing we love. So that was a really cool raffle prize, grand prize, if you will.
I'm seeing a question here from Ben about contingency plans and what to do if there's a power outage or internet connection issue. So in our case, we kind of had like 3 tiers of a backup plan. So it was like, if we had an issue with Crowdcast, I was the one kind of running things behind the scenes. So it was, if I had an issue, then Callie and another person on our team were kind of set to take over. If it was an issue with like where the event just couldn't go on, period, our plan honestly was to just send an email to everybody and apologize and reschedule for another time. With power outages or a dropped internet connection, that's not always something that you can control. I did attend another event a few weeks ago where somebody's internet was dropped out like in the middle of speaking. And in that case, when it's something where they can jump back in, you might have somebody kind of in the wings prepared to engage attendees, maybe in the chat, or maybe they jump on camera and just be like, hey, like we're, waiting for so-and-so to connect again. But always having somebody ready to jump in with something like that to keep attendees engaged is a good idea too.
Scrolling through the questions here. Someone said, we are already seeing video fatigue with reluctance for any event longer than 60 minutes. Any suggestions for overcoming this new phenomenon? That's a great question. Zoom fatigue is real, here to tell you. So with that, a couple options. You could offer kind of mini events, if you will, but it could be a series. So for example, if you wanted to you could space these out however you want. Maybe it's 3 days and it's 20 minutes each day or something like that. You could even call it a workshop. But there are ways that you can kind of get creative here, break it up, and make it a little bit more tolerable than just 60 full minutes.
I'm gonna try and tackle 2 questions here. So somebody asked what we meant by on demand. That means just when your content is uploaded for people to access whenever they are ready, the recordings. And with something like that, you could make it free to attendees and then charge after the fact to people who didn't attend live, which is this other question. For a 2-day event, do you suggest pricing a 2-day price and then selling individual sessions at a certain price after the event? Honestly, like that's where your own strategies and goals and creativity come in. Once you're done with the virtual event, you're going to have just a pile of content. And what we did with ours, with MC Thrive, we kind of flipped the platform to be that on-demand experience so people could go and view the sessions. They can still poke around the the exhibitor hall and each booth. There, we left all of the activities and everything that we linked out to, all of the resources. So we kind of left it as one big event experience still. But you could, to this question's point, sell those sessions individually, or even make them individual recordings that people can access by submitting a form, for example.
I've seen a lot of questions pop up about how long should your event be? How do you know if it should be one day versus multiple days? It really depends on your members, your industry, but also what your goal is. So that's really why you want to start with that goal at the beginning of your playbook and determining what are you trying to accomplish. If it is to provide your members with value, and that's above all other goals, then that might be something that you consider hosting a longer event for. But it really just depends. There's no cut and dry answer to that one, unfortunately.
Oh, I have so many questions, so many good questions. I'm trying to, let's see, skim through here. People wait. Okay, yeah, people wait until the last minute to register, particularly for virtual. Do you recommend a cutoff date ahead of time, or to take attendees up until the event begins? So that was something that we had to play with a little bit, because we wanted to make sure that people could access the platform with like at least a day to get in and kind of explore. But we also, of course, wanted to get as many attendees as we could. So you kind of have to fill it out. It all also depends on how your attendees will gain access to the platform. If it's a single sign-on situation where they register and then their credentials are sent to them automatically, that's pretty easy on you. But if it's something where you have to manually go in and give people access, that could be a little bit of a headache the morning of your event to have to add a bunch of people last minute. So, and in fact, that could be another staffing role, is having somebody in charge of those registrations and making sure that everybody gets the access that they need when they need it.
I see a lot of questions about the virtual exhibit hall and how to actually drive traffic and make sure that your exhibitors are getting the value that they're hoping to get out of your event. One thing we did with MC Thrive that worked really well was, first of all, at the end of each session, we concluded each session by encouraging attendees to go visit our sponsors. So we just kept reminding people. But in addition to that, we uploaded quizzes in each sponsor's booth. And these were short quizzes. They were 4 questions. And we got the questions from our exhibitors. We asked for them. And they were basically just questions about the company. These were things that the exhibitors wanted people to leave the event knowing about their company. So for example, which of these products does company XYZ offer? So very, short, easy questions. But the point of it was, when attendees completed that survey, they would get an additional entry into our grand prize, which again was that $100 gift card and the $500 donation to the charity of their choice in their name. And since that was a pretty appealing grand prize, a lot of people did visit our sponsors' booths to complete this 4-question quiz, because that was pretty easy, and that would be 12 additional entries right there. So we found that to be successful. I do recommend that. That was a tactic that worked well.
Somebody asked if we had any pre-recorded presentations or if they were all live. All of ours were live, but we have seen a whole host of virtual events doing sessions with pre-recorded. So I think either way, whichever way you want to go, doing pre-recorded sessions does make it a little bit easier and a little less nerve-wracking too. Or you could always experiment with doing both.
Let's see. Someone asked, as soon as someone registers, do you send them instructions on how to best navigate through the event? We did not do that as soon as someone registered. We did that right before the event. So in the days leading up to the event and the morning of the event, we sent emails with the directions for how to use the platform. We did encourage people to get in there and experiment in the days leading up to it, but we didn't start that communication in the weeks leading up to it. We also put together a short video for how to navigate the platform. We sent that out prior to, I think, the morning of the event as well, so that people could actually see a visual, and it was a walkthrough of how the platform worked. And we also housed that video in the LMS, in MC LMS. And that way, if someone was attending the event and they were struggling to navigate it, that how-to video would be right there where they could then watch it again.
Somebody asked, how do you adapt this to a hybrid meeting? That's something that I personally have been noodling on for a while now, just thinking about what that might look like. You know, it could be that you have your in-person activities and you have a whole kind of virtual experience happening side by side, or it could simply be that you live stream, whether it's only your keynote or every single session for attendees to access virtually. And either way, it's a great way to, you know, open that open the content up to people who might not be able to attend live.
I do just want to throw this out there. We're getting so many questions, and they're all great questions. I wish we had time to go through all of them. What we'll do is I'll get with my team after this webinar, and we'll see if we can compile either some kind of white paper or blog post or something with these questions, so that we don't just leave you hanging, because I don't want any of your questions to go unanswered. So just be on the lookout for something where we can get to a bit more of these.
Somebody asked if we sent alcohol with the kit or just the mixer. I don't know if you know, Callie, that was just, I think it was everything.
Yeah, the alcohol came with it. We actually did this through a third-party vendor, and they sent it out, and it was the entire kit.
Yeah, if you poke around a little bit, there are a lot of really cool like different prize options, you know, and things that you can even brand with your own logo or event branding as well, or prizes that, you know, might be a little different that kind of tie into the theme of your event, just to make it all more fun and consistent. Suggestions on what to do in advance with login issues. That would be something where you definitely want to have your subject matter experts like at the ready to understand exactly how the login should happen. And then they can kind of help guide your attendees with maybe some pre-written instructions. And it's always a good idea if you're going to have people who are set to communicate the same thing over and over, to just have a few blurbs kind of written out ahead of time so they can be consistently communicating the same instructions and important details.
So a lot of people are asking follow-up questions about the quizzes that I mentioned in the exhibitor booths, and how you actually track that and make sure that people completed it. It depends on what software you're using to actually host your virtual event and house these quizzes. Again, we used MC LMS, so there are metrics on the back end that would allow us to see who completed what. And then from there, we created a spreadsheet on the back end, and we just kind of tallied up who had completed what. And we announced the speaker. We didn't announce the grand prize winner at the event because we needed a little bit of time to gather all of those metrics. but we did announce it in the week following. So depending on what technology you use, you may have all of that data on the back end.
One question about figuring out what your attendees want without annoying them with a survey. So we actually included on the registration form for MC Thrive kind of what people were challenged with right now. And that gave us really great intel kind of as we were planning the content, because as Callie mentioned, we were still looking for a few speakers along the way. But also just for how to engage attendees during the day. And then we shared a lot of that with our speakers so that they could then kind of ensure that their content was more tailored to what our attendees were looking for. So that's one way to do it. Even just in conversations with your members as well, as you're talking to them here and there about things, just like, hey, like, what are you struggling with right now? What would be super helpful for you right now? And likely you'll start to hear some themes that you can lean into. I think we probably have time for about one more, Callie, if you want to hit one more. And then like Callie said, we'll find a way to get all of your questions answered in the coming weeks here.
I see one question here. This is a really great question. It says, at my live events, I took photos. Do you have any ideas for getting participants videos or testimonials? It's a little bit different, obviously, with a virtual event. But there are ways that you can get photos from your attendees in a remote sense. So for example, if you wanted them to submit a photo of maybe their workspace, or I think we did one, we did a contest where we asked people to submit a picture of what makes them thrive. And we got a lot of people posting pictures with their morning coffee. I know coffee gets everyone going. And we asked them to tweet those or share them on social media using a certain hashtag. So if you can come up with something that people could take their own pictures of and then share them with you on a social media platform, that's one way to gather photos. As far as testimonials, it depends on what you're trying to get a testimonial for. If you're trying to get a testimonial for your organization in general, then there might be a way that you can have some kind of small group discussion during your event where you ask questions to get some of those, or you might have a breakout session where you specifically ask people if they would be willing to give a testimonial. Sometimes this happens organically though, especially testimonials for your event. And when it happens organically, that's the best. You can't ask for anything better than that. But sometimes people will, during the chat, put in comments about how much they loved a certain event that you hosted, or how much they're loving this event that you're hosting, or something or a benefit that you offer and how valuable it's been to them. So keep an eye on the chat throughout the day, and have a few staff members keeping an eye on the chat too, because you're going to be so busy. But that way, if you see something come through, screenshot those. And you can compile those later as a testimonial, you can put them together kind of like a collage, and that's a testimonial in itself. So that's just one idea.
All right, well, we are right up on time. So I hope that this made you all feel a little bit more comfortable with moving forward in this kind of virtual world we're in right now. And we hope that you're even thinking about how to incorporate virtual experiences in your entire event strategy moving forward, whether it's hybrid like we kind of talked about, or whether it's even more all virtual experiences. And in that spirit, Callie mentioned that we have an exciting announcement to make. We are doing it again. We're going to be hosting another edition of MC Thrive on Thursday, October 22nd. You all are the first people to hear about it. This time, the theme around the event is going to be moving forward and how you can use all of the new tools and skills and ideas and lessons that you've learned in the last few months to grow your memberships and provide value. So we hope you'll join us. If you go to memberclicks.com/mcthrive, you can see everything we have planned so far, and it will be completely complimentary to all MemberClicks customers. So keep an eye out for more on that.
All right, guys. Well, that is everything we have for you today. But before you hop off, when you X out of this, you should see a survey link pop up. Please, please, please take that survey. We are always trying to improve our webinars moving forward because we want them to be valuable for you. So it's a short survey, and we will be picking a winner, someone who completed the survey. We will draw a name and give a $100 Amazon gift card. So just answer a couple quick questions and that could potentially be you. That's everything we have. We will wrap it up here, but I hope everyone has a wonderful rest of the day. And thank you so much again for joining us. Bye, everyone.